I learned the hard way how much trouble you can get into when you don't know how to break up with someone. I was at a loss. Like, how are you supposed to tell the person that you're with that you don't want to be with them anymore? I was scared of hurting them, and I was also scared that they would get mad and yell at me and maybe go on to hate me. And this was just not something that I wanted to face, so I kept putting it off. I am not proud of this, but it even got to the point where I started thinking, maybe I'll just wait for them to break up with me first. I know, it was really bad. Don't be like me. Would not recommend. But then, in the meantime, I got myself stuck in a relationship that I didn't want to be in anymore, and that was no longer good for me because I did not know how to get out of it. No regrets. Although, had I known at the time that breakup conversations don't need to involve a huge explosion and that there is a way to break up with someone to keep their hurt and anger at a minimum and also your guilt and regret at a minimum too, I would have saved myself a lot of time and that relationship probably would have ended a lot more gracefully. This whole situation was a huge wake-up call to me that okay, I really need to learn how to break up with someone so that I don't let another relationship go on past its natural lifespan again. And as I was consuming all these books and podcasts on breakups, I realized that a lot of the things I learned in my training as a therapist on communication skills and emotion regulation can also apply to breakup conversations. So, based on my self-learning and also my professional knowledge, I hate the word professional, but anyways, I have compiled 7, let's call them best practices to follow when having the breakup conversation to make sure that we have the healthiest, most respectful, most graceful ending possible. And I'm going to share them with you in today's video. And if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm Audrey. I'm currently practicing as a therapist, and the tradition on this channel is that every February we talk about a love and relationship topic that's not really talked about in the midst of Valentine's Day. And personally, I can't think of a better time to talk about breakups. This is the second video in our series on breakups this month. Last week we talked about how to decide whether or not to break up with someone. So if you're still on the fence about your current relationship, then that video is there for you. If you think it'd be helpful, I'll leave it linked somewhere here. And if you are freshly out of a breakup right now, the next 2 weeks videos are going to be dedicated to how to heal and move on after a breakup. So if you think that's something you might need right now, then I welcome you to subscribe so you can catch them when they come out. But for now, let's gear up for this breakup conversation together and just rip off the band-aid and get it over with. You will notice that all of these 7 best practices are all done before we have the breakup conversation so that we can plan and prepare. Isn't there a saying that goes, planning to fail is failing to plan, or something like that? Whatever it is, it applies to breakup conversations too. Planning and preparing is going to be the way that we make sure that this conversation goes as smoothly and successfully as possible. Write down your reasons for choosing to end the relationship. What if I break up with them, but then down the line I regret it and I feel like I made a big mistake? Is a very common reason why people hesitate to break up with their partner. Chances are we will have moments of regret after the breakup, but that still doesn't necessarily mean that this was the wrong decision. In fact, we probably would have felt even more regret staying in a relationship that had already passed its expiry date. So this is where journaling down your reasons for choosing to end the relationship before you break up with them is going to benefit you immensely. This is actually a tool that I picked up from the book How to Not Die Alone by Logan Ury. This was a really great book. I would highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in romantic relationships. But what Logan suggests is that by capturing our thoughts and feelings in the moment when we're strongly feeling that need to end this relationship, we can then read that back after the breakup whenever we have a moment of regret come up to remind ourselves of why we wanted to end things in the first place and squash that regret. And I can say anecdotally that this works. Give yourself a deadline. It's so easy to be like, I can't break up with them now because their birthday is coming up, or we have that dinner reservation booked already, or they're going through a really stressful time at work. Even though they're kind of always having a stressful time at work. If we don't give ourselves a deadline to have the breakup conversation, we're probably just gonna keep finding the next next reason and the next reason to keep putting it off. It really shouldn't matter what dinners are booked already, because chances are, if this relationship is already past its lifespan, that dinner is not going to be a good time anyways. But obviously we still want to be considerate of our timing, because chances are the next few days after the breakup are going to be really tough for them. So we don't want to be breaking up with them like the day before they have a job interview or something. If we need to wait a few days for example, Friday evening to come around so that they can have the weekend to do whatever they need to do, then that's reasonable. What's not reasonable is to keep putting it off for months or maybe even years, waiting for a stressful time at work to pass when they work an inherently stressful job that's stressful all the time. There is never going to be a perfect time. Instead, once the decision is made, we should aim to do it sooner rather than later so that we don't waste any more of their time or our time. Plan where to have the conversation. The breakup conversation should happen ideally at your place or their place with just the two of you in the room. And breakups should never happen in a public place. That's all I have to say about this one. Plan what you're gonna say in advance. There's probably gonna be a lot of nerves and a lot of dread and just a lot of emotion going into this conversation. But we can help to calm our nerves a bit by putting some thought into what we're gonna say to them in advance so that we can go into the conversation already with an idea of what to say. The tone we should aim for in this entire conversation is calm, compassionate, and understanding, while also being firm and direct. We also want to avoid sounding angry or like we just don't care at all, because that is probably going to lead to regret. We also want to avoid putting in too much fluff or sugarcoating things or being overly nice or overly understanding, because that can just confuse the other person and they might not even get that we want to end the relationship. I'm going to give you a very general skeleton script for a breakup conversation that you can use. Obviously, this conversation is not going to go perfectly by any script, but at least having some sort of well thought out script beforehand can help us to make sure that we minimize hurt for them and regret for you. So here it is, and feel free to customize it for you. This is really hard for me to say because I care about you a lot and I don't want to hurt you. I've given this a lot of thought and I think it would be best if we ended this relationship. We've been trying really hard for a while now to make things work, and I think we can both agree that things still haven't been working because we've both expressed that we're not happy about things. I want us both to be happy, and I want us both to be in relationships that meet our needs, and I don't think this relationship is going to give either of us that long term, and I think it would be best if we ended things here. From there, we have to plan for different scenarios. For example, if they get mad and say hurtful things at us, or if they ask why we want to break up. Is it something about them? Is it something that they did? And there is a good chance that any of these things could happen, and I don't want any of us to get caught off guard. So let's figure out together what we're gonna say in each scenario so that we don't end up speaking in anger and we can remain calm. Okay, we got this. If they ask us why, what did they do wrong, or what's wrong with them, we should not answer them directly. Because, well, if we tell them what they did wrong, first of all, they might blame themselves, but then also that opens an invitation for them to explain and justify themselves, which wouldn't really be adding anything to the conversation at this point anyways, because we've already decided that we want to end the relationship. And then if we tell them what we think is wrong with them, well, at the very best, it doesn't add anything to the conversation. And at the very worst, well, it might damage that person's self-esteem and they might fixate on that thing when it's really not even our place to say what's right and wrong about this person. Like, our opinion isn't really relevant to this person anymore when we don't even want to be with them. Instead, if they ask why we want to break up, we should respond by talking about the incompatibility between you two rather than giving negative feedback about the other person. So we can say something along the lines of, this isn't anything about who you are or what you did. It's about the fact that we're just not a good fit for each other. And then we want to explain why you guys aren't a good fit. So For example, let's say that your top love language is physical touch, but your partner is just not a very warm and fuzzy person. Like they're just not very physically affectionate. And this has been an ongoing issue for you guys because you need physical touch to feel loved and you haven't been getting it. So you can say something like, I know you understand how important physical touch is to me, and I know you've been trying. But even so, it's still not at the point where that need is being met for me. And I just don't think it's a good fit for either of us, for one of us to have physical touch as their top love language, and then the other one of us to not be the biggest fan of physical affection. Another scenario we should prepare for is if the person gets mad or yells at us or says hurtful things to us. If this happens, let's try our best to resist the urge to yell or say hurtful things back because, well, one, we don't want to add any more hurt to an already hurtful situation. And then two, yelling back wouldn't do anything anyways because this relationship is already over. Instead, we can say, please don't yell at me. I don't want this to be more difficult than it has to be for either of us. I understand that you're hurt and upset, and I truly am sorry for any hurt that I caused you. Ugh, guys, this conversation is not going to be fun either way, but I do hope that these frameworks and phrases can help the conversation to go at least a bit smoother. Brace for impact. One of the reasons I was putting off breaking up with someone was because I didn't want to hurt them. And for any fellow recovering people pleasers out there, you will understand. Hurting another person is like the worst possible thing imaginable. But what I learned the hard way is that we just have to be prepared and expect that the other person is going to be hurt and they might have a reaction. They might get mad at us or they might start crying for who knows how long. We definitely can't expect them to react well, and we're just gonna have to tolerate it and face it. I wish there was a way around it, but there just isn't. And also they have every right to be upset. We are gonna be okay though. Okay, they are eventually going to stop crying because they are an adult. And also, they're not gonna bite our head off. We will survive and so will they. And in fact, they're gonna be even better off because they're not gonna be in a relationship anymore with someone who doesn't wanna be with them. Like, how hurtful is that? Set a time limit on the conversation. Yes, a breakup might have to unfold over a few days or weeks, depending on how many logistics are involved, but for the breakup conversation itself, it is best to set a time limit on it of like 2 hours max, but ideally still less than that. We shouldn't allow the conversation to go on for too long because the longer it goes on for, the more opportunities open up for that person to ask you more questions or argue for why they disagree with you and why you should still stay together, and also for them to say hurtful things to you and for you to say hurtful things to them. This conversation should be kept to the basics, aka the fact that you want to end the relationship for the reason of this incompatibility between you guys, and also that you are grateful for the time that you spent together and any support that they offered you during that time, and that you wish them well. If that person is really upset and we're a really nice person, we might want to stay to comfort and console them and answer all of their questions, especially if this is someone that we still care about. But it's important to remember that at this point, this is not our responsibility. And also, it might just confuse them even more. The most that we can do is give them a hand on the shoulder, if appropriate, thank them for our time together, and wish them the best. Plan something nice for yourself immediately after the conversation. I once had a breakup conversation with someone in the evening, and then my only plans after that were to get ready for bed and go to sleep. I don't think it comes as a surprise that I did not sleep very well that night, and I wish that I had even just asked my best friend beforehand, like, hey, I plan on breaking up with this person tonight. Can I call you after? Just so that I could have had something to help me decompress before I tried to fall asleep for the night. Feelings are always running high or just running weird after having a breakup conversation, so it can make such a huge difference to pre-plan something nice for ourselves immediately after the conversation, just to help us deal with that initial shock or sadness or whatever we might be feeling. Whether that be calling a friend or going over to a friend's house and ordering sushi together, or going to a really hard workout class and blowing off some steam, now is the time to give ourselves some extra attention because we just did something really difficult and we deserve some extra TLC. I know I've been trying to keep it lighthearted and trying to make light of breakup conversations in this video, but that's been intentional because, I mean, no one wants to see a scary and serious video on how to break up with someone, which is already scary and serious. But I do want to validate that breaking up with someone is scary and nerve-wracking, but it's still not as scary as letting a relationship go on that's no longer working and having more hurt feelings involved than there needed to be. So I really hope that this video equips you and prepares you to have the breakup conversation. It really is just a matter of ripping off the band-aid, knowing that both of you eventually will be better off. As always, I hope you are doing well. I appreciate you, and I will see you next time. Bye.